So going more detail of the adaptive immune system. So again, antigens are going to be kind of two ways that we're dealing with it. So again, anything that causes an immune response is an antigen. So looking at antigens, if we're talking about a virus or a bacteria, so they can either infect cells, meaning they go inside the cells and have their effects that way, or they're processed by our phagocytes. So major one's going to be neutrophils, but also major one are macrophages. Remember, monocytes go into the tissues, become macrophages. So that's going to be the major one for that one. So what's going to happen is either our own cells are infected, or a macrophage is going to come along and eat or consume a pathogen, so an antigen of some sort. So again, if it's a staph bacteria or something, the macrophage comes along and eats it. And that can be where it's processed as well. A way that we communicate throughout the immune system is either the entirety of an antigen or a piece of that antigen is then put up a flagpole on the plasma membrane. So what happens is it's either a piece or on a cell, it's going to say, hey, that pathogen is inside our body. So it's a way for communication to happen to help stimulate the immune system even further. So this is going to be a way that we can trigger an immune response. So we can have presentation. So put up the flagpole, put it on a receptor, which we're going to talk about the receptors next, and saying, hey, there's danger. It's another way we can put out the help call and stimulate our immune system. We're going to talk about T cells more later, but they are what we call cell-mediated immunity, meaning they're going to be fighting against more things that are inside the cells. But say this cell is infected with something. There's a virus inside. So this cell is infected. It needs a way to communicate with the immune system. If a T cell is just going by, well, it doesn't know what's happening inside the cell. So what happens is this cell can put up a message on its flagpole and its receptor saying, hey, it's this pathogen that's inside me, or this piece of this pathogen that's inside me. Then the T cell is going to know what's going inside that cell, and then it can come along and it actually can handle, we'll talk about cell mediated, but it can fight against the infection because it knows what's going on. So it's all about communication and good communication with the immune system. There's so many parts to it and so many different cells that we need a way to communicate. And this is going to be presentation. Antigenic presentation is one of them. Same thing, antibody-mediated immunity for B cells. Specifically, it's going to be antigen presenting cells. B cells are actually even going to present to T cells, so it's another way they communicate. But again, it's a way that B cells can recognize what's happening in the body and they can have the appropriate response. So again, looking just at our adaptive immunity, that's what we're talking about. Antigen presentation triggers the immune response. Again, you have some way of saying there's some sort of infection going on inside the body. So cell-mediated, we depend on our innate. So we're going to talk about which phagocytic cells are kind of antigen presenting cells in a little bit. But phagocytes are activated by the innate response, and then they will communicate to the specific response. So that's going to happen where activated T cells are actually ones that kill, at least some of them. We'll talk about the 3 types coming in later on videos. But T cells we have killer or cytotoxic T cells. So if an antigen or an infection pathogen is inside the cell, so you have a bacteria inside the cell, well, the only way to get rid of the infection, the cell is going to say, hey, I'm infected, and it's going to show on its flagpole that it's infected, and the killer T cells are going to come along and kill that cell. That's the only way you're going to get rid of the infection. It's already inside the cell, it's already doing its damage. So the only way is to cut your losses and get rid of the cell. So again, we'll talk about that more when we get to that. Then antibody immunity, antibody mediated immunity is B cells. So they're going to recognize that something's going on, and they are going to then produce cells. They're going to clone themselves and then produce plasma cells, which will do antibodies. Antibodies we'll talk about in another video, where they're going to do different ways of neutralizing or helping phagocytes come along and destroy the antigen. So we're going to have two different ways of kind of attacking things between B cells and T cells. So major histocompatibility complex, or MHC proteins, are going to be membrane glycoproteins. So if you remember, a glycoprotein is going to be a protein on the surface of the cell that has kind of a sugar signature specific to you. So it's going to have kind of the different branches of a sugar complex, making the glyco, and then it's a protein. So it's going to have a specific one that shows that you are you. So if you have, it's going to be receptor. If all of a sudden there's an antigen here, so say the cell has either, we'll talk about it, a phagocyte has come in and processed an antigen, it's going to present it, or it's saying it's infected and it's going to present part or the entirety of the antigen, then this is where antigen presentation occurs. And most antigen presentation, we're going to talk more when we get to T cells. It's going to be very important with T cells because, again, they're fighting against intracellular issues and cancer kind of cells. So they need that communication to know what's going on inside the cell. Without that communication, it doesn't know what's happening inside the cell. So we have two types of MHC proteins. So we have two types of those glycoproteins that can present antigens to your immune system. MHC1 class, so you can say class 1 MHC or MHC1 class, is going to be on all nucleated cells. And why do we say nucleated cells? Well, most of your cells are nucleated, not going to be on your kind of stratum corneum of your skin, just because not nucleated anymore. And the majority is not RBCs. So RBCs, remember, red blood cells, erythrocytes, throw out their nucleus. So they're not going to be on those. So again, this is going to be a normal cell. Say it is a liver cell and you have a hepatitis virus. So you have a virus inside your cell. Well, normal liver cell was going about its business, doing normal things, and all of a sudden the virus comes in and attacks it. Well, it's dead no matter what. The virus is going to kill it, or it can help its fellow liver cells, and it can present on its MHC1 protein. It can say, hey, this is what's inside my cell. So then we can have the immune system recognize this and take care of the cell and take care of the infection. So it's kind of a self-sacrifice, putting up the flag saying, hey, surrender, and then the immune system can recognize that and say, okay, I got you, and I'll take care of it. There are certain cells, so MHC1 proteins, again, are on everything that's nucleated, so pretty much everything but red blood cells. Class 2 are only on specific cells called antigen presenting cells, or APC. There are three major types of antigen presenting cells: macrophages, dendritic cells, which we'll talk about, and B cells. So this is only when the cell is processing or taking in antigens. So remember, macrophages are the phagocytic cells. So as they are doing their job, so again, they're non-specific part of the immunity, they're doing their job of eating whatever pathogens it's finding or foreign material. It's coming along and eating it, phagocytizing it, and processing it. Well, why it's processing the cell and destroying it, then it's going to put up a flag on its MHC, calling to others, saying, hey, and calling to specific immune system, saying, hey, this is what's going on. So again, we're going to talk about this where helper T cells are really going to recognize this, which is going to be our coordinator. It's kind of like our party planner of the immune system. And we'll talk about those. So another way to communicate. Dendritic cells, we're going to find, remember, a lot of times they're going to be in connective tissue, especially in your epidermis. So if any pathogen gets into the epidermis and deeper tissues, then it can fight against it, and it can say, okay, hey, I'm going to send my flag up, saying that there's an infection. And then B cells. So this is a communication part between the cell mediated and the humoral. So, or antibody mediated. So B cells, when they're fighting against whatever pathogen that they found, so B cell, they're also, again, another way to communicate. So it can present part of an antigen that it's fighting against, again, to help tell the party planner what's going on. So we'll talk more about these coming up. So MHC2 are only on antigen presenting cells, but these cells, so APCs, are nucleated cells. So B cells are nucleated. They are lymphocytes, so they have the nucleus. Macrophages are monocytes, still nucleus. Dendritic cells have nucleus. So antigen presenting cells have both MHC1 and MHC2. Other cells only have MHC1. It's only on presenting cells that we have the 2 type. So this is just a picture. So this is looking at MHC1. So on all nucleated cells, MHC1. So what happens is, again, viral or bacterial infection. All of a sudden you have the infected cell. So it's either a virus or a bacteria most often. And what happens is the endoplasmic reticulum, which is going to, the rough endoplasmic reticulum is going to produce proteins, or kind of finish off producing proteins, the ribosomes. And they are going to produce MHC1 proteins, those glycoproteins, and attach abnormal pieces or peptides of the virus or bacteria. So it's going to take a piece of it and it's going to present it on its MHC1 protein. So that's going to be basically, it kind of processes it and then cuts up to pieces and shows a piece off. So then again, T cells can come along and recognize that specific piece and do its job. So again, we'll talk a lot about this when we get to the cell-mediated immunity. MHC2, again, is only on our APCs, or our antigen presenting cells. So this is looking at those type of cell. So they're going to be cells that are phagocytic that take in extracellular pathogens. So it's going to be a lot of times in macrophages. It's going to take in the cell. It's going to chop it up into pieces because that's the point. It's destroying it. And then it's going to produce and present a little piece of it on its MHC2 to tell, hey, this is one of the infections I am fighting off. Because again, this isn't specific. It's going to fight off any type of bacteria. It may have one that has kind of a tail or something, and it'll fight off this infection as well. So then on an MHC2, it might have a piece of that. So it's going to fight off different types of pathogens. So MHC2 present, MHC1 present more when they're infected. So that's the difference. Infection of the cell, MHC1, that's the way the cell can tell, hey, I'm infected. Phagocytic cells are going to be MHC2 saying, hey, this is what I've been eating recently, just telling them kind of this is what I've been having for dinner and letting the rest of the immune system know. So again, antigen presenting are going to engulf or ingest the antigens through endocytosis and present pieces on the surface of the cell in its MHC2 proteins. And these are going to be, again, dendritic cells, macrophages, and even B cells. So again, it's coordination between the two types. So again, we're having communication and coordination between the innate or non-specific immunity and the specific immunity. It's all about communication. If communication of the immune system is off, then that's going to cause problems. It's all about proper communication. So again, dendritic cells are going to be in connective tissues and the epidermis. So that's where they are going to look for those kind of pathogens. They are phagocytic, again, so they will eat or engulf pathogens that are in that connective tissue. They are an antigen presenting cell, so they have MHC2. So they hit bacteria. This is kind of a cartoon. This is the dendritic cell looking for one of its pathogens in connective tissue. And then this is a T cell looking for it, saying, okay, I'm ready to fight. Have you found anything yet?